You know who the left should blame for the overturning of Roe versus Wade? Not the Supreme Court, not Christians, not conservatives, not Republicans, not pro-lifers. The only ones they should be blaming are themselves. It is 100% their fault Roe got overturned. A lot of people, myself included at one point in time, could sympathize with the scared teenager, with the drug addict who had no business bringing a baby into this world. We could understand that. We didn't like it, we didn't agree with it, but we could at least understand it. We went from safe, legal, and rare to up to the moment of birth. We gave you an inch and you took a mile. We drew the line when you decided that you should be able to murder a fully formed infant up to the moment it exits your body. You have no one to blame but yourself.
My brother in Christ, Doug, Mr. Predicto, will be doing some narration as well as reading some Bible quotes in this video. During this video, I also use some AI voices. Now, when I had an afterthought or was trying to complete the project, rather than haggle Doug every 5 minutes to get him to do a voiceover, I decided just to go ahead and use some AI voices just to get the work completed. Hey guys, Pastor Mill here, and finally I'm getting around to the beginning of the series that I told everybody I was going to be doing, and it's all based on a live stream that Granny Jessica did a while back where she covered and did some commentary over this lady Daisy, who's a Christian, and she said many things that upset Granny and her whole entire chat. And it was interesting enough, when the lady described the abortion, Granny completely disagreed.
You can say, no, you're sick for, let me tell you something. If you think abortion is okay, you're sick.
Oh, you're sick.
You're a sick person. If you think that ripping a baby's arms and legs off while it's still alive and twisting its head off.
Oh, please, please educate yourself on fucking abortions.
While it's still.
You know what's sick? The fact that you have to make it sick to get people to believe you. Ripping off legs, ripping off arms, ripping off heads.
Alive in the mother's womb, you better rethink your heart.
Granny spoke out of turn because she was certainly wrong. Anyhow, I wanted to take the time, do this video slowly. It might be one part, two part, I don't know yet. If you guys could sit in a live stream and gossip and talk about drama for 4 hours, I'm sure you could take a little pinch of your YouTube time out and watch this video. Perhaps you might learn something. Perhaps you already know what I'm about to say. Anyhow, guys, let's talk about it.
May it be an evening star shines down upon you. May it be when darkness falls, your heart will be true. You walk a lonely road. Oh, how far you are from home.
What? What are you doing here? What are you
From the moment I saw you, I knew that you were the most beautiful thing ever. You were a piece of me. You were strong like me. Our relationship, I cherish forever. I love our smiles, our dancing, and every moment that we spend together.
May it be the shadows call will fly away. May it be your journey on to the better day. When the night is overcome, you may rise to find the sun.
course, I know abortion, the topic, is completely controversial. I'm going to be speaking from a pro-life, but I'll also acknowledge pro-choice's opinion as well. And I'll bring in some facts, statistics, stats, all that thing concerning abortion, and we'll even talk about the root cause of why women get abortion in high numbers today, which is actually America alone performs 1 million abortions every year. And since 1973, abortion in America has risen to the number of 63 million abortions. Wow. In the whole world globally, it's got to be over 1 billion abortions already performed. And in fact, they even have a clock that ticks and shows you how many abortions are performed yearly. For instance, from January to March now, look at the number of abortions. Now, what you were looking at was the abortion clock. So from January, February to the beginning of March, already almost 9 million abortions have been performed worldwide. Well, let's first also address the elephant in the room. No, not my size. I'm not that big, okay? But anyhow, let's address the elephant in the room, and that would be, Pastor Mill, you have no business talking about abortion. You're a man, my body, my choice.
My choice! My choice! My choice! My choice! My choice!
Well, I'm also not a black man, and I have every right to speak on racism. In fact, it's encouraged that I speak on racism to bring awareness and be on the right side of history. Now, I don't have to be a black man or the minority or any of those things to speak on racism. We would all agree. And also, where I'm a man, I also have 3 children. And I have 1 grandson, and I just found out last week that I have another grandchild on the way. My daughter is now 9 weeks pregnant on my 2nd grandchild, and we are completely happy about it. Just imagine if my daughter went down to the clinic and decided that she's not going to go through with this and she's going to have an abortion. What a sad state of affair. I mean, you know, seriously, think about it, guys. That's my grandchild. For my daughter to do something like that would be horrible, sinful, destructive in her lives, destructive in our lives. It would be against God's word, because even God says himself that he hates the hands who have innocent blood on them.
Proverbs chapter 6 verses 16 to 19. There are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him, 17 haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, 18 a heart that devises wicked schemes.
Now I know everybody likes to say God is love.
1 John chapter 4 verse 8. ESV. Anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love. If whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love.
But God is many things. He's not just love. He's also full of wrath. He's also vengeful. He's also a jealous God. I've heard this 1,000 times, and this is a great opportunity. I've heard people say, God is love, God is love, God is love. That's all I ever hear. But God is many things. So let's take this opportunity to lay it to rest, to prove in the scripture that everybody leans on to say that God is love. Let's also see what the scripture says about other things on how God feels. God is vengeful. God can actually hate someone. He hated Esau. God is full of wrath. God is jealous. God is actually, yes, love. But he's also many other things. So finally, let's use the scriptures and this opportunity to finally lay this to rest, that God is many things.
The Lord is a jealous and vengeful God. The Lord is vengeful and strong in wrath. The Lord is vengeful against his foes. He rages against his enemies. 3. The Lord is very patient but great in power. The Lord punishes. According to Bible. Yet ye say, wherein hast thou loved us? Was not Esau Jacob's brother? Saith the Lord. Yet I loved Jacob. 3. And I hated Esau, and laid his mountains and his heritage waste for the dragons of the wilderness.
He's about many things. Now, probably the most popular slogan, or the most perverted slogan and untruthful slogan is, my body, my choice.
My body? We really talking about my body? My body? What to do with my body?
Well, what about the innocent baby's choice? Listen, once you're pregnant, that body isn't just yours anymore. There's a baby occupying that space within inside of a woman. So therefore, it's not just your body anymore. You have a vital, living person inside of you. So therefore, that claim, my body, my choice, what about the baby's choice? The baby don't even have a choice. He's going to be led to the slaughter by a woman who is supposed to love that baby, comfort that baby, and bring forth a child to the world. Remember what the scriptures say. Go forth, and multiply. So, with that said, my body, my choice. What about the child's choice? Now, of course, I believe you guys should bring out a notepad and a pen and start writing down the stuff I say so you can fact check me later. That's important. If you want to check out what I'm saying is true and you want to look into it for yourself, it's best that you fact check me just so you can call me out a little later if you choose to. But I can guarantee you, I'm only using the information that's already out there and the information is already confirmed and it's truthful. Now, what are the reasons why women get abortions in the first place? Well, statistically, 85% of all abortions are from mothers who are no longer married, who were married, divorced, or are single. And only 14 to 15% of abortions are while women are actually married. Think about that. Abortions are performed because of women being promiscuous. Now, the number's not up to 85%, but the number is pretty high that women are promiscuous, sleeping around, going out on a Friday night, getting pregnant 2 weeks later down at the abortion clinic, or whatever. The point I'm making is that is one of the main reasons for abortion, women being immoral and promiscuous and sleeping around. And those are the facts. It's even gotten to the point where now abortion is basically a birth control for women. In many cases, yes. There's women going to the clinic 7, 8, 9 abortions. Wow. Unbelievable. There's many reasons why women have abortions, which I think is ridiculous. For instance, a lot of abortions are done out of selfishness. Women don't want to be tied down with a baby, or because they're a single mom, or because they're chasing a career, or they're in school or in college and universities, and they feel that this would set them back and take away from what they have or what they're trying to achieve. But that reason has to be at the bottom, because you're inconvenienced or might affect your career or your prospects for an education. You decide to snuff out the life of an innocent child who has no say in the matter, when all it would have took for these women was more responsibility when they decided to lay with a man in a way of having intercourse, sex, whatever. There's no reason on God's green earth that a woman should get an abortion based on the fact that she wanted to finish her schooling or she wanted to continue to climb the ladder in her career. It's a very selfish reason for having an abortion. I would think many would agree. Now, another reason for abortion, women claim poverty. Well, I'm not financially stable, or I'm broke, I'm poor, I don't have the money to bring forth a child. My kid too would be poor, and I don't want to struggle like that, and I don't think no child should have to struggle. Really, guys, we have a lot of social programs instilled in our society. We have welfare, food stamps, all those sorts of things. Help from the churches. We actually have programs and systems in place that women can fall back on if they need help. And these women say, well, I don't have enough money, I'm poor, and I don't want to bring a child into my poor situation. Now, is that a reason to snuff out an innocent life who is in fact actually a human being? Not just a clump of cells, as they would like to say. These babies are human babies. Now, the pro-choice people, they always used to use the word fetus. Now, a lot of them don't use the word fetus anymore because it's actually, it's an Italian word. And the way it turns out is that the word fetus actually means little one, little child, little baby. And it wasn't really working well for the pro-choice. So a lot of them moved back from using the word fetus, and now they usually use the word a clump of cells. Look, I don't care what word they use. At the end of the day, it's a human baby. Yes, a human baby that is already set up in its DNA, in its genetics, and everything else that will come forth a human child. You can argue with me all day on that, but at the end of the day, truth is the truth. Whether you want to come to terms with that truth or not, that's entirely up to you. So, let me say, a lot of women aren't having children because of poverty, okay? Which I believe is a selfish move. Okay, worst case scenario, a woman ends up being poor with her child. But that child, I mean, I see many families, guys, where the children had very little, but they were happy children. And like I said before, women chasing a career and they don't want to have a baby, that's another reason that I do not believe is justified. Using abortion as birth control is not a very good system in place. And it shows that birth control pills are 99% effective for a woman to not get pregnant. That's a pretty good statistic. And some of the arguments too, guys, is that, well, what about the danger of the mother's life? Well, guys, that's a pretty rare case. That doesn't happen as often as Parent Planhood and other organizations who are to the left like to promote. That is very small in number. You'll probably have a better chance of getting struck by lightning than going full term with a baby to the point where now the woman's life is in danger. Like I said, it's very rare and it hardly even shows up statistically. And of course, you have the women's most favorite thing to say. What about if a woman is raped or incest? That number is significantly even smaller. 0.005 because of incest. That's how many abortions are because of incest. Think about that. 0.005. And as far as rape is concerned, it doesn't even actually hit 1%. Now, they try to level the number off at 1% of all abortion, but when you look in and you dig into the numbers, it doesn't quite hit even 1 full percent. And by the way, incest and rape is combined together in that number. That is actual statistically facts. Oh, I know a lot of women are going to be upset and don't want to hear this truth. And they want to go back to the lies of the left, the propaganda, all that stuff. You got to remember, Parent Planhood, which we're going to talk a little more about a little later on, about Margaret Sanger and all these people. We're going to go there. But I just want to make this point that Parent Planhood is a business, guys. They're a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's true. They even asked to double the quotas at times. Here you go. Have a look at this.
So that's what I thought I was going to do. And then April of 2009, I was awarded Planned Parenthood's Employee of the Year for 2008. And that was really exciting for me. I know you're all very proud of me. Thank you. And I got to go to their annual fundraiser, and I got to sit at the table with Hillary Clinton. Don't be jealous. And we had a very intimate conversation, me, Hillary, and 10 Secret Servicemen. And so that was good. So, then I was kind of like, all right, well, I was disappointed in January to find out we were going to be doing third trimester abortion, but okay, this was fun, and so maybe I can just keep it up. I can just keep doing this. And then August of 2009, I had a meeting with my supervisor, and we were going over my budget for the upcoming fiscal year. And she told me that they were imposing an abortion clinic quota. And by the way, we were going to be expected to double the amount of abortions that we had provided the previous year. And that didn't make sense to me because at Planned Parenthood, we are about preventing the need for abortion. We are about reducing the number of abortions. So why in the world would we be doubling this abortion quota? It doesn't make any sense. So I said something to my supervisor, and she looked at me and she laughed. And she said, "Why would we reduce the abortion number, Abby? That's how we make our money." And I thought, well, okay, this is an interesting turn of events for me. I don't know where I'm going to go from here, but...
Now, this woman you just seen explain that. She used to be involved with Parent Planhood, deep into it, and she served and worked with them for years, and she knows the numbers, and she was even told to double, or we're going to try to double the quotes. Why? I thought abortion was supposed to be rare, a last resort. If that's the case, and that's what they're always trying to say with their propaganda, oh, we don't really want to, this is a very rare, well then why are you trying to double the quota? It's all lies, guys. Now this one lady says, was it wrong for me to have a procedure? She uses the word procedure to basically have the baby removed because she was pregnant in the tubes. Well, ma'am, if you're pregnant in the tubes, neither the baby and you will survive. Both people will end up, Now this person said abortion is not a sin. Based on what grounds? According to the scriptures, it says clearly, you shall not kill, right? Now, your argument is, well, it's not a baby yet, it's not full term, it's... Look, those lies are just hogwash. And even to the point of fertilization, science also all agree that that is when life begins. Now in the scriptures, let's talk about child sacrifice, through abortion even. Well, first, let's hear Doug do some narration while he reads scripture concerning the topic Moloch, who was a god who was worshipped by the early people, and they were sacrificing their children.
Leviticus chapter 20, verse 2 through 5 states, "Say to the Israelites, any Israelite or any foreigner residing in Israel who sacrifices any of his children to Moloch is to be put to death. The members of the community are to stone him. I myself will set my face against him and will cut him off from his people. For by sacrificing his children to Moloch, he has defiled my sanctuary and profaned my holy name. If the members of the community close their eyes when that man sacrifices one of his children to Moloch, and if they fail to put him to death, I myself will set my face against him and his family, and will cut them off from their people together with all who follow him in prostituting themselves to Moloch." Leviticus chapter 18, verse 21 states, "Do not give any of your children to be sacrificed to Moloch, for you must not profane the name of your God. I am the Lord." Leviticus chapter 20, verse 3 states, "I myself will set my face against him and will cut him off from his people. For by sacrificing his children to Moloch, he has defiled my sanctuary and profaned my holy name." Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 31 states, "You must not worship the Lord your God in their way, because in worshiping their gods, they do all kinds of detestable things the Lord hates. They even burn their sons and daughters in the fire as sacrifices to their gods."
What was happening in those days? God was very angry, killing their children to the Moloch god, okay? And by the way, that Moloch god is also many gods throughout history. It's the same god with a different mask. The god Moloch is also the god Baal, and people sacrifice their children to these. And how did they do it? They made a statue out of bronze, that sort of thing, and heated it up very hot. And as Moloch had his arms hanging out like this, the flames in the fire made his arms red hot. So what the people would do, they lay their baby onto the arms of Moloch. And to hide out the cries and the screams of the babies, a group of men would beat the drums to cancel out the sound of the young baby screaming, so it would be less on the mother to hear. God was so furious, he wiped out those people that were participating in such a thing. Now, by the way, it wasn't necessarily the parents that laid the child into the arms of Moloch, those fiery hot arms. In most cases, it would have been a priest. And we know this through scripture as well. So they were giving up their child in sacrifice to their God, and usually a priest would intervene and actually lay the baby in the arms. But the point is, can you imagine the screams of those children? To the point where people had to beat drums to quiet out the voices of the screaming child, so everybody in the community didn't have to do this so much? Wow. Women today are still sacrificing their babies to some form of sacrifice reasons. For example, well, if a woman has a child aborted, it was sacrificed because of her career. She sacrificed her baby because she's in poverty. She sacrificed her baby because she didn't finish college and university, those sorts of things. People are still sacrificing their children, not necessarily to Moloch in particular, But the way Satan would see it, any kind of sacrifice he would contribute unto himself. He loves people when they abort their babies and kills their children in that way. He loves it. And Satan will even relish in those moments. So in actual fact, he will probably call it his sacrifice. She's actually sacrificing it for many different reasons. If you choose education over the child, you sacrifice the child for your education. And if you believe that it's going to interfere with your career, or you don't have enough money to bring a child into the world, you sacrifice them for that reason. So no matter how you look at it, people today are still doing the same thing in a little different way as they did when they sacrificed their children to Moloch. A sacrifice is a sacrifice. Did you know that there's satanic organizations that call themselves Satanists that actually have their own organization where they reach out to women or have open lines and those sorts of things that women can contact them and abort their child through their organization? What? That is an actual truth. Here it is. So these organizations saying, look, if you're going to have an abortion, do it through us. So they can claim it in the name of Satan. That you aborted your child, and they can offer that up to Lucifer, Satan, whatever. These organizations under the satanic banner are literally sacrificing your child through their god, Lucifer. I mean, who would have ever thought it came to the point where a satanic organization or a Satanist group would decide, you know what we're going to do? We're going to open up channels to give women the opportunity to have abortions, but have them through our organization. So that way we can claim that sacrifice unto our god, Satan. That's exactly what's going on here. And many Satanists have actually admitted to this. They're still even sacrificing to Lucifer through their organization by aborting children. Insane. I mean, we always hear the argument from the left that if a child isn't inside the mother's womb, it's not viable anyhow. So in other words, it totally depends on the mother. Of course it does. In fact, the baby will be very viable if it remains in the mother's womb. It's when you remove it, it is no longer viable. Just for an example, look at Pfizer, okay? The COVID thing. They made $37 billion just from America and Canada alone giving out the COVID vaccinations. And now we find out that it's almost equal to a bad flu. I mean, look at Pfizer, the lies, the masking, the terror they sent through the community. Yes, people died from it. But people die every year from a flu, common cold, that sort of thing. It happens. But why did they drive it down the throats of everybody, put them in a mass panic? And everybody went, and in fact, the government even forced people to get the immunity shot by taking away their jobs, or the threat of taking away their job, that sort of thing. You know what I'm talking about. We all heard it, right? So anyways, Pfizer made $37 billion. That's not even counting the other immunity companies out there that was building vaccines and that sort of thing and putting it out there to be purchased by the government for the people. That is a fact. Now, times that by a global amount of money, it's in probably the trillions. I don't know for sure, but I do know that if they're going to make $37 billion just off the vaccines here in Canada and America, how much did they make worldwide? Wow. So Parent Planhood is a business. Why don't we take the money that we give Parent Planhood and take that money and give $20 or $30 or $40,000 to every woman who is pregnant, and we pay for their nutrition, we take care of them, and we let them go all the way to the 9 months until they have a baby, and we put the baby up for adoption. Now, before anybody says, yeah, but adoption is cruel, nobody actually adopts. The kids end up in foster care. I heard Granny mention that.
There's adoption. I don't care what led it. I don't care what trauma will do to you. Hell, I don't even care if you'll live.
Facts. More women die at a much higher rate from complications due to abortion than during any stage of pregnancy. Those are the facts.
You better carry that baby to full term. Yeah, but how you think these children in adoption homes are living good lives?
Many children are living great lives in foster care. Not all situations are the same. Many children brought up through foster care are very successful, and many of them who in turn, once turning adults themselves, have adopted children of their own.
It's really the overflowing foster care system.
I've heard that argument that Granny made by many different people. What about children in foster care? What a miserable life they must live. But is that true? I know many children that went through the foster care program who excelled, prospered, are happy, and joyful. I know several of them who are now in college, some are in university, as well as I know several who have a family of their own. But let's take this a little further. Based on Granny's argument about children in foster care having a miserable life, is that a reason to terminate a baby because that baby may or may not end up in a foster care and be sad or miserable? And in principle, with that argument, what about children who are born with disabilities, who have long-term life disabilities, who will never recover and will be forever in wheelchairs? Are we to terminate them too? What about old people with Alzheimer's, dementia, terminal illness, who are sad of all stages of life? Should we terminate them as well? The point is, where do we start and where does it end? No matter somebody's situation in life, their life matters. Did you know that there's 2 million families looking to adopt annually every year, while there are approximately 1 million abortions every year? Do the math. There are twice the number of families per abortions.
You may rise to find the sun.
There's 2 million people every year on the list right now looking to adopt a baby, and there's only 1 million abortions performed yearly. Add up the numbers, guys. There's enough families out there to take care of all the children that were purposed for abortion. It shouldn't be a mathematical issue. So all the money that we put into Parent Planhood and all these other abortion organizations and that, why don't we take the money, pay the women to go full term and give their child to adoption? It's certainly better than slaughtering a baby in a woman's womb, don't you agree? We could do that. We certainly could. We could legislate all that stuff to make sure that women are receiving an appropriate amount of money for their troubles. I mean, I realize a lot of women would disagree with that. Well, Pastor, you don't have to carry the baby for 9 months. Well, ma'am, I would have took extra precautions to make sure I didn't get pregnant. And if that's you, ma'am, talking to me, I'm going to talk straight back at you and say, look, there's consequences for sex. We all know this, whether you're on birth control, men are using contraceptives, all that stuff. There's still a chance for a woman to get pregnant during intercourse. That is a fact. So the responsibility mostly lays on a woman in that sense, because she's the one who's going to be receiving the man's seed. Now, of course, condoms break, but did you know that 7% of all condoms break? But at the same time, it's like 2% that result in a pregnancy because of the break? And yes, like I already talked about birth control. Now, I'm all for birth control, but not the morning after pill or those sorts of things, because that in fact could be an abortion. I'm only about the pre stuff before it gets even to the point of even an egg being fertilized. That's the birth control that I support. Now, of course, I have sympathy for the girl who's 17 or 16 or 14 or 13 or 12 who end up getting pregnant by, messing around. I have sympathy for these people, but I also have more sympathy for the innocent child that is going to be butchered and slaughtered inside of a mother's womb. And that's the argument. I mean, look, women have a responsibility to be educated enough to know that intercourse on any level has the potential of bringing forth a pregnancy. I believe in being abstinent, okay? That's what I truly believe. I believe that you should wait till you get married, all that, right? People say, well, Pastor, it's 2024, get with the times. Well, God's moral truth and God's moral law doesn't change by the year or by the age we're in. It's the same moral law as yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So the law of the Lord and the moral truth does not change because you feel more free in your life to do whatever you feel you want to do. I mean, I'm trying to be a little relaxed in this video. I understand the topic is terrible and a lot of people don't talk about it, don't want to talk about it, or they pick a side with so much vigor and energy towards the other side. I get that, guys. I'm not a stupid man. I've been in the ministry a long time, and I talked to many women who had abortions or talked them out of abortions, and I've seen the end result of the abortion. And I've also witnessed women and the causes of depression based on an abortion they had many years ago. Now, some women have no problem with abortion. It's no different to them by rubbing two hands together. But at the end of the day, these women for some reason don't have a conscience or a heart for that matter. Women are supposed to be the nurturers of our children. When we start killing off our own children and our own lifeline and everything else involved with having children, when we start exterminating that process, what kind of society have we become? Ask yourself. Am I right? Or am I wrong? And also, here are some cold-hearted facts. Some really deep, crazy truths. If a woman who is pregnant gets murdered by a man, and she's less than even 2 weeks pregnant, and they see that during an autopsy, and they find out that this woman actually had a fertilized egg, or as some would say, just a clump of cells, that man would be charged with double homicide. That's a fact, and here's the law. So, if a woman decides to go to an abortion clinic and have an abortion, there's no consequences for that. So the baby has no meaning then. But if a woman is pregnant at the lowest level of pregnancy and a man took the woman's life, he will also be charged for the murder of the baby. Think about it. And hypothetically speaking, just say the woman gets murdered on a Saturday and she had it all planned for Monday, appointment made and everything, to go down Monday and have her abortion. But she happens to be murdered on a Saturday, basically 2 days before the appointment. That man, despite only being 2 days to her appointment, would still be charged with double homicide. And those are the facts. And of course, if a man has no say in what a woman does with her body, as women like to argue, and she says to the man, I'm having an abortion. And even if the man is begging and praying and on his knees asking her not to get an abortion, she has every right to have one, right? Well, if she decides to go full term with the baby, now that man has to pay child support until the baby's 18 and sometimes longer, depending on schooling, college, all those sorts of things. The point being is, if a man has no say in whether a woman keeps the child or not, and the woman decides to keep the child, he's on the hook until the child is an adult. And even if the man doesn't want the baby and argues for her to have an abortion, and she decides not to, he's on the hook still. Why is the baby recognized as a human being by the government and the laws of the land? But if a woman chooses to abort, those laws no longer apply. It's a life when a woman says it's life, and it's not life if a woman says it isn't. That doesn't make sense to me, and it certainly shouldn't make sense to anybody else. I'm of the opinion, and I have facts to back it up, which we're going to talk about the biology, all those sorts of things, that a child is a human being, no matter at what point of conception, whether it's first, second, third trimester, right up to the day it's born. That child is a human being. You say cluster of cells, I say a cluster of life. Now this is very interesting as well. Did you know a woman that aborts her child, that the cells of the baby and the mother that mixed, and they share the cells? So that part of the baby, despite it being aborted, there's a part of that baby in the form of cells, that sort of thing, that remains with the mother. So the child's DNA, the child's blood cells, those sorts of things remain within a woman despite she has an abortion or not. I just thought that was also a very interesting fact. Now let's talk a little bit about biology and at what time does a baby become a baby or not. This is going to be very interesting. I'm about to show you a video of a woman's egg just getting fertilized with a sperm cell. And as soon as the sperm touches the egg, there's a flash of light. And it sets up a zone of electricity that prevents other sperm cells from penetrating that egg. Only one sperm cell per egg, and that's an actual fact. Now people are mistaken with twins. They think that 2 sperm cells break through. When it comes to twins, it's either that cell splits, then you have twins, or 2 eggs are fertilized at the exact same time by 2 separate sperms. A lot of people are uneducated and think that 2 or 3 sperm cells hit the egg and they all get inside and now you got triplets. But that's not the way it actually works through biology whatsoever. In fact, that field, that force field sets up and it's like the Lord says, let there be light, and there was. And the same thing, that as soon as the sperm cell touches that egg, boom, there's a flash of light and there's like an invisible force field that surrounds the egg that prevents any other sperm cells from entering in. Have a look.
Video is under a special microscope. It's an egg and showing the moment of conception. The moment the sperm enters the egg, there is now documented source of light that enters the egg. The moment of conception, the very moment that the sperm enters the egg, there is a flash of light, and the light has entered the world.
So this is the documented moment of conception. And the sperm enters the egg, and there's this poof of light that comes off of it. Scientists are studying this, and they're looking at it, and they're like, okay, well, it looks like it's a release of zinc, a burst of zinc that comes off the egg. They can't explain away that light happens when life happens. Isn't that amazing? Light happens when life happens.
God formed you in your mother's womb. There is a reason that you are here today.
My argument is, just like the Lord said, let there be light, that egg also, there's that flash of light that happens. What is? Scientists don't even know why. Now they know it's a buildup of zinc that's released at that very moment to protect the egg and to prevent other intruders from getting in. But they don't know what that whole light thing is about. It's very interesting that God says, let there be light, and there was. Well, life is light. And at that very moment of conception, you'll see that flash. It's very impressive.
Poof of light that comes off of it. Scientists are studying this, and they're looking at it, and they're like, okay, well, it looks like it's a release of zinc, a burst of zinc that comes off the egg, and it creates this appearance. But any way you slice it, they can't explain away that light happens when life happens.
As you can see clearly, there was a flash of light, and at that moment, that's when God put his finger right on that egg. Wow.
What is wrong with Margaret Sanger?
She said that the most merciful thing that a family could do to one of its young is to kill it.
Well, I'm sure that was taken out of context.
In this video, I'm going to show you who Margaret Sanger really was and why she founded Planned Parenthood, while demonstrating a visceral hatred for children, parenthood, marriage, and the Catholic Church. Every quote I'm about to give you has been verified and is well documented. But from my view, I believe that there should be no more babies. The most merciful thing that the large family does to one of its infant members is to kill it. We don't want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. I accepted an invitation to talk to the women's branch of the Ku Klux Klan. I was escorted to the platform, was introduced, and began to speak. In the end, through simple illustrations, I believed I had accomplished my purpose. A dozen invitations to speak to similar groups were proffered.
Do you believe there is such a thing as sin?
Well, I think the greatest sin in the world is bringing children into the world that have disease from their parents, that have no chance in the world to be a human being, practically. Delinquents, prisoners, all sorts of things just marked when they're born. That, to me, is the greatest sin that people can commit.
Hey guys, it's Pastor Mill, and I'm back with the third installment in the series, The Truth About Abortion. Yes, I've been away for a while, guys. I haven't been really up on YouTube. I've been kind of here and there on it. I have been doing a bunch of short videos, but at the same time, guys, I really don't have a whole lot of time all the time. And to be honest with you, YouTube is probably a small, insignificant part of my life. But anyhow, I managed to get some things together, some free time, so I decided to get back into projects, and of course, let's talk about it. This is the third installment that will conclude the series, The Truth About Abortion. We're going to talk about the procedure of abortion in an animated cartoon, as well as we're going to talk a little about Margaret Sanger, yes, the founder of Planned Parenthood, who initiated the program of Planned Parenthood in the very beginning to get rid of the black race. Yes, you heard it. She was a very racist woman. And she was following the same programs that the Nazis implemented during World War II.
The term eugenics is basically a set of beliefs and practices that aim to improve the genetic quality of a human population. There have been various applications of eugenics, perhaps the most famous being the Germans before and during World War II, which was condemned by the Nuremberg war crimes trials. But the Germans did not invent eugenics. In fact, they were inspired by the founder of the taxpayer-funded Planned Parenthood. The truth behind the genesis of that organization and its founder are much darker than most Americans realize. Who was the real Margaret Sanger? Why was she heralded by the Third Reich as the greatest socialist in America? Why do modern Democrats who claim to support the African American population justify presenting her as a cultural icon?
Yeah, we're going to talk about it. Now, of course, part 1 and part 2 of the video series, The Truth About Abortion, is very important. But I feel that this one, this part 3, is more important than the other two because it will give everybody a true understanding of what goes on during the performing of an abortion. Now, what prompted me to do this video in the first place was people's ignorance on abortion and what goes on behind the scenes, that sort of thing. And I believe I did a pretty good banged up job in part 1 and part 2 to explain things about abortion that perhaps many people didn't even give any thought to. But this video will show in a cartoon way of the procedure of abortion, which is important. Now, I don't know if Jessica watched part 1 or part 2. I have no idea. But if she hasn't watched 1 or 2, that's unfortunate. But I truly hope she watches this one because she's the one who came forward and pretty much initiated these videos to begin with by saying this.
To tear the limb from the baby's body. One by one, the rest of the limbs are removed, along with the intestines, the spine, and the heart and lungs.
If you think that ripping a baby's arms and legs off while it's still alive and twisting its head off.
Oh, please educate yourself on fucking abortions. I was sick of the fact that you had to make it sick to get people to believe you. Ripping off legs, ripping off arms, ripping off heads.
As you could clearly hear, Jessica completely disagreed with that Lady Daisy on the procedure of abortion. Well, in this animation cartoon, we're going to lay everything to rest. Because in the cartoon, there's a man explaining everything that goes on. And this man is actually a doctor, an abortionist doctor.
I'm Dr. Anthony Levatino, and in the early part of my career as an OBGYN, I performed over 1,200 abortions.
Who performed over 1,200 abortions. He appeared before Congress, and once he came to the realization that what he was doing was wrong, and it was somebody's daughter or son on the table. Why it took him 1,200 abortions to figure that out, I have no idea. But anyways, he came to the conclusion that what he was doing was wrong. And he talks us through the actual procedure of abortion. So for Jessica and others who are interested in knowing the actual truth on how abortion is performed, please watch this video. Thank you, and God bless.
My name is Dr. Anthony Levatino. I'm a practicing obstetrician gynecologist, and I performed over 1,200 abortions. First, I'm going to describe a first trimester medical abortion. This is a procedure in which the mother swallows pills in order to terminate her baby, and it is performed up to the 9th week of pregnancy. The procedure involves 2 steps. Step 1. At the abortion clinic or doctor's office, the woman takes pills which contain mifepristone, also called RU46. RU46 blocks the action of a hormone called progesterone. Progesterone is naturally produced in the mother's body to stabilize the lining of the uterus. When RU46 blocks progesterone, the lining of the mother's uterus breaks down, cutting off blood and nourishment to the baby, who then dies inside the mother's womb. It is important to note that even after it has been taken, it is possible to reverse the effects of RU46 and save the baby if progesterone is administered. The sooner, the better. Step 2. 24 to 48 hours after taking RU46, the woman takes misoprostol, also called Cytotec, that is administered either orally or vaginally. RU46 and misoprostol together cause severe cramping, contractions, and often heavy bleeding to force the dead baby out of the woman's uterus. The process can be very intense and painful, and the bleeding and contractions can last from a few hours to several days. While she could lose her baby anytime and anywhere during this process, the woman will often sit on a toilet as she prepares to expel the child, which she will then flush. She may even see her dead baby within the pregnancy sac. At 9 weeks, for example, the baby will be almost an inch long, and if she looks carefully, she might be able to count the fingers and toes. RU46 is only FDA approved for the first 7 weeks of pregnancy. While RU46 can be used off-label up to 9 weeks, the failure rate increases as the pregnancy progresses. If failure occurs, she will usually be offered a surgical abortion.
Oh, please. Please educate yourself on fucking abortions. You know what's sick? The fact that you have to make it sick to get people to believe you. Ripping off legs, ripping off arms, ripping off heads.
First trimester surgical abortion called suction D&C, dilatation and curettage. This is the most frequently performed abortion and is used typically from 5 to 13 weeks of pregnancy. After administering anesthesia, the abortionist uses a speculum like this. This is placed inside the vagina and opened using this screw on the side, allowing the abortionist to see the cervix, the entrance to the uterus. The cervix acts as a gate that stays closed for the duration of pregnancy, protecting the baby until it is ready for birth. The abortionist uses a series of metal rods called dilators, like these, which increase in thickness, and inserts them into the cervix to dilate it, gaining access to the inside of the uterus where the baby resides. The baby has a heartbeat, fingers, toes, arms, and legs, but its bones are still weak and fragile. The abortionist takes a suction catheter like this one. This is a 14 French suction catheter. It's clear plastic, about 9 inches long, and it has a hole through the center. It is inserted through the cervix into the uterus. The suction machine is then turned on with a force 10 to 20 times more powerful than your household vacuum cleaner. The baby is rapidly torn apart by the force of the suction and squeezed through this tubing down into the suction machine, followed by the placenta. Though the uterus is mostly emptied at this point, one of the risks of a suction D&C is incomplete abortion. Essentially, pieces of the baby or placenta left behind. This can lead to infection or bleeding. In an attempt to prevent this, the abortionist uses a curette to scrape a lining of the uterus. A curette is basically a long-handled curved blade. Once the uterus is empty, the speculum is removed and the abortion is complete.
Oh, please. Please educate yourself on fucking abortions. You know what's sick? The fact that you have to make it sick to get people to believe you. Ripping off legs, ripping off arms, ripping off heads.
Second trimester surgical abortion called dilatation and evacuation, or D&E. A D&E is performed between 13 and 24 weeks of pregnancy. After administering anesthesia, the abortionist uses a weighted speculum, like this one, that opens the vagina widely. Because second trimester babies are so large, this greater access facilitates a late-term abortion. Late-term abortion requires that the cervix be prepared 24 to 48 hours in advance with laminaria. Laminaria is a type of sterilized seaweed that absorbs water over 8 to 12 hours and swells to several times its original diameter. Once removed, metal dilators can be used to further open the cervix as needed. Once the cervix has been stretched open, the suction tube is placed inside. A baby at 20 weeks gestation is as big as the length of my hand, from head to rump, not counting the legs. The suction machine is turned on, and pale yellow amniotic fluid surrounding the baby is suctioned out through the catheters. With babies this big, they don't fit through catheters this size. The baby's bones and skull are too strong to be torn apart by suction alone. This is a Sofer clamp. A Sofer clamp is made of stainless steel. It's about 13 inches long. The business end is about 2.5 inches long and 1/2 inch wide, and there are rows of sharp teeth. This is a grasping instrument. When it gets a hold of something, it does not let go. The abortionist uses this clamp to grasp an arm or leg. Once he has a firm grip, the abortionist pulls hard in order to tear the limb from the baby's body. One by one, the rest of the limbs are removed, along with the intestines, the spine, and the heart and lungs.
If you think that ripping a baby's arms and legs off while it's still alive and twisting its head off.
Oh, please. Please educate yourself on fucking abortions. Oh, what's sick? The fact that you have to make it sick to get people to believe you. Ripping off legs, ripping off arms, ripping off heads.
Usually the most difficult part of the procedure is extracting the baby's head, which is about the size of a large plum at 20 weeks. The head is grasped and crushed. The abortionist knows he has crushed the skull when a white substance comes out of the cervix. This was the baby's brains. The abortionist then removes skull pieces. He removes the placenta and any leftover parts of the baby with a curette, scraping the lining of the uterus for any remaining tissue. The abortionist then collects the baby parts and reassembles them to make sure that there are 2 arms, 2 legs, and all the pieces. Once all the parts have been accounted for, the abortion is complete. For the woman, this procedure carries a significant risk of major complications. Finally, I'm going to describe a 3rd trimester induced abortion, which is performed at 25 weeks to term. At this point, the baby is almost fully developed and viable, meaning he or she could survive outside the womb if the mother were to go into labor prematurely. Because the baby is so large and developed, this procedure takes 3 or 4 days to complete. On day 1, the abortionist uses a large needle to inject a drug called digoxin. Digoxin is generally used to treat heart problems, but a high enough dosage of digoxin will cause fatal cardiac arrest. The abortionist inserts the needle with the digoxin through the woman's abdomen or through her vagina and into the baby, targeting either the head, torso, or heart. The baby will feel it. Babies at this stage feel pain. When the needle pierces the baby's body and the digoxin takes effect, the life of the baby will end. The abortionist then inserts multiple sticks of seaweed called laminaria into the woman's cervix. They will slowly open up the cervix for delivery of a stillborn baby. While the woman waits for the laminaria to dilate her cervix, she carries her dead baby inside of her for 2 to 3 days. On day 2, the abortionist replaces the laminaria and may perform a second ultrasound to ensure the baby is dead. If the child is still alive, he administers another lethal dose of digoxin. The woman then goes back to where she is staying while her cervix continues to dilate. If she goes into labor and is unable to make it to the clinic in time, she will give birth at home or in a hotel. In this case, she may be advised to deliver her baby into a bathroom toilet. The abortionist then comes to remove the baby and clean up. If she can make it to the clinic, she will do so during her severest contractions and deliver her dead son or daughter. If the baby does not come out whole, then the procedure becomes a D&E, a dilation and evacuation, and the abortionist uses clamps and forceps to dismember the baby, piece by piece. Once the placenta and all the body parts have been removed, the abortion is complete. I'm Dr. Anthony Levatino, and in the early part of my career as an OBGYN, I performed over 1,200 abortions. One day, after completing one of those abortions, I looked at the remains of a preborn child whose life I had ended, and all I could see was someone's son or daughter. I came to realize that killing a baby at any stage of pregnancy for any reason is wrong. I want you to know today, no matter where you're at or what you've done, you can change. Make a decision today to protect the preborn. Thank you for your time. I will no longer do any more abortions.
So guys, if you made it this far in the video, congratulations. You know, the truth is truth. And sometimes that truth can be dark, downright dirty. But at the end of the day, it is the truth. Now, of course, let's not put all hats on Granny, of course, you know. I mean, there's a lot of people that share that same sentiment that she did. And in reality, it's okay to be wrong in your thinking. It's okay not to know the truth sometimes. But we have to be open for correction. Look, if I don't know something, I look it up. I never guess. If I don't know something and I need to be educated on something, I actually look into things before I speak. It's okay to be corrected. It's okay to say, I don't know something. Correction is a wonderful thing. Knowledge is power. The more we know, the more we know. I mean, we just heard from that abortion doctor who performed over 1,200 abortions. So if there's anybody to testify to this truth, it's him. I'll be honest, I don't know everything that's involved with abortion and that. Now, I am pretty knowledgeable on the issue or the topic, but I don't know everything. And I even had my mind opened up as I reviewed these videos for my own video. I've done a lot of investigation in this series, a lot of looking into things. I didn't want to put out any false information. I didn't want to be ignorant of facts, that sort of thing. So everything I put in these 3 episodes of the series are in fact nothing but truth from truthful sources. So anyhow, guys, after you've seen that, what that abortion doctor just professed, he was also in Congress as well. You have to admit in your own heart of hearts, that's some pretty dark stuff. So let's continue now with a little segment. I'm going to have Doug, Mr. Predicto, do a voiceover concerning Margaret Sanger.
Margaret Sanger wrote, "Negro parents need birth control to help alleviate some of the needless suffering and heartbreak to get firmly established on the road to health and better living." Margaret Sanger wanted a lot of Americans wiped out and even harbored special disdain for Black Americans. She instigated the Negro Project in 1939. The goal was to reduce Black population. She said this would be done through birth control, but she vocally supported forced sterilization and segregation of the unfit. Even Planned Parenthood itself admits that Sanger supported the 1927 Supreme Court ruling in Buck versus Bell that compulsory sterilization of the unfit was allowable under the Constitution. Sanger campaigned hard for the success of her Negro Project and raised funding to make it a reality. In a letter to her friend Clarence Gamble of Procter & Gamble in 1939, Sanger wrote, "We do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members."
I just wanted to pause for a moment and elaborate on a few things. Margaret Sanger was actually a racist. She hated black people, guys. She hated them. In fact, a big part of this program, Parent Planhood, was to extinguish the lives of black people and keep the population down as low as possible. So she invented, kind of like eugenics, what the Germans did in World War II.
We don't want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. I accepted an invitation to talk to the women's branch of the Ku Klux Klan. I was escorted to the platform, was introduced, and began to speak. In the end, through simple illustrations, I believed I had accomplished my purpose. A dozen invitations to speak to similar groups were proffered.
Do you believe there is such a thing as sin?
Well, I think the greatest sin in the world is bringing children into the world that have disease from their parents, that have no chance in the world to be a human being, practically. Delinquents, prisoners, all sorts of things just marked when they're born. That, to me, is the greatest sin that people can commit.
Like if somebody was born with a lifelong illness, or, like they were born with missing arms or missing legs, or having Down syndrome, or that sort of thing, or even autism. The Nazis under Hitler seen this as being a problem because they don't feel that like somebody with autism should go forward and have a child, or somebody with Down syndrome perhaps should have a child, or somebody with, an illness in their DNA and end up passing it on to future children. Hitler and the Nazis seen this as being weak, so they came up with a way to correct it. And Margaret Sanger also went along with the eugenics program in thinking that, hey, she can get rid of all the illnesses. She thought, well, she could prevent many more illnesses from being passed on, as well as kids with Down syndrome, that sort of thing. And of course, she's seen the black people for some reason as a threat. Now, a lot of people don't like this part of history, but it is what it is. Let's continue with Doug.
Sanger wanted Planned Parenthood to train black doctors and ministers to spread the unholy gospel of population control. She believed she could use their trusted leaders to warm black Americans up to her agenda. Planned Parenthood even built a clinic in Harlem targeting the black community in New York City. According to Planned Parenthood report at the time, this clinic started by Margaret Sanger as the Harlem branch of her clinic at 17 West 16th Street, New York City, which is the largest of its kind in the world. Planned Parenthood would go on to place its facilities in minority communities all over America, a practice that continues to this very day. The Negro Project did not die with Margaret Sanger. The horrifying reality is that in recent years, more black children in Planned Parenthood's hub of New York City were aborted than born alive. In 1975, Dr. Laverne Tolbert was invited to sit on the board of Planned Parenthood in New York City. She was the one and only woman on the board and the only person of color. She agreed to join because she thought it could help the women of her community. But during her time on the board, Dr. Tolbert learned about the abortion methods Planned Parenthood had committed. She was so horrified by the information that she ultimately stepped down. She writes, "During the course of my 5-year tenure, we received a lot of literature. Most discussed population control and the concerns for the growing number of people in the world, poor people. I struggled with the question, which population are they trying to control?" She says, "As a black woman, the question kept coming back to me like a boomerang. I wondered why abortion was more necessary for my ethnic group, why this organization fought so hard to give us the particular right when the rights for better education, better jobs and better housing seemed paramount. The racism doesn't stop at their agenda. Planned Parenthood also has a long history of accepting racist donations with the understanding that the money will be used to kill black children. In a televised debate with U.S. Representative Bob Dornan in 1989, Planned Parenthood President Faye Wattleton admitted that Planned Parenthood accepts donations from people who want to support us because they want all welfare mothers and all black women to stop having children. In 2008, numerous Black Parenthood affiliates were caught agreeing to accept donations earmarked to kill black Americans. Calls came from an undercover journalist posing as a racist concerned about his white son being disadvantaged by affirmative action. The caller told Planned Parenthood of Idaho, "We just think the less black kids out there, the better." The Planned Parenthood employee responded with, "Understandable, understandable. I'm excited and I want to make sure I don't leave anything out." Black employees said they regularly experience acts of racism and anti-blackness from their white colleagues, but found that when they reported problems to human resources, there was no meaningful consequences or accountability for racial harm. One gesture of atonement from Planned Parenthood was to remove Margaret Sanger's name from one of the buildings in New York City. The fact is that Planned Parenthood doesn't have a business without discrimination. Removing Sanger's name will not remove her enduring legacy. Bigotry is the whole game at Planned Parenthood. Justice demands that Planned Parenthood be defunded and shut down.
You see, for the most part, this information was hidden from the public. Most people didn't even know this sort of thing about Margaret Sanger and how she actually felt towards the black people and Hispanic and other people of color. And of course, they try to keep it, on the low as much as possible because they knew that people would fight back and push back. Back in the day, people used to get a Margaret Sanger award for your accomplishments in the field of abortions, that sort of thing, okay? But once all the news started coming out about who she truly was as a person, a racist, someone who hated people of other skin colors, they ended up having to shy away from her actual name and stop giving out the Margaret Sanger Award. Interesting. So what you see here is the left eating the left. There was so much shame and humiliation attached to that woman's name that they ended up having to abandon her award system and keep her name off as much as possible of any information that was associated with Parent Planhood. And anybody that supports Parent Planhood is in fact not only just supporting a murderous cult, but in fact are supporting racism. For example, if you get behind and support anything concerning Hitler, you will be classified as a Nazi. Am I right? So if you support Margaret Sanger and her dream, the Parent Planhood, you also got to acknowledge the person behind it all, who was a racist, a person who hated people simply because of the melatonin in their skin. Anyhow, guys, I'd like to thank you very much for watching this whole series. Now, of course, it took me a while to get to the third part. I'm a busy guy. YT is certainly not my whole life. But anyhow, I'd like to thank you, and I hope you got something out of the video series. And remember, guys, I do realize that abortion is a sensitive topic for people. But what am I to stand on? The truth or the lies? Am I supposed to be pro-life or pro-choice? Should I be defender of the innocent or defender of those who were about to do something that in most cases they regret? Anyhow, guys, thanks for watching. God bless.